What is it with you walking around thinking you're better than everybody else?
Hey, I'm George from MovieWeb. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, George. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So there's a lot to talk about here. Excited to jump into it. First of all, you're obviously a fan of action movies, I assume. You've done a couple.
What told you that? Yes, I am a little bit.
A little bit, barely. So maybe you can just tell me and the audience, what are the ones that inspire you the most? There's a lot to choose from, obviously. But the ones that really connected.
It's a great but a tough question. I love you coming in strong, deep end of the pool. Let's see if I sink. I think it sort of depends on it depends on mood, because sometimes you want to watch something like The Raid, or you want to watch the Indian movie Kill, which I really enjoyed. I think it was last year. Sometimes you want more of a Die Hard, which is more character driven. It's I think in this, oddly enough, I think Heads of State was, if I had to pick an influence, it would have been Wile E. Coyote, which is kind of odd. But when I started storyboarding it, I was
that's
like,
an excellent choice.
It's PG-13, right? So you got to make it very punchy. How do you make it punchy? Because Tom and Jerry is hella punchy, without being, hyper violent. So because I've had the crutches of violence in my last two films, I was very excited genuinely for the challenge. There was not a moment where I was like, oh no, PG-13, whatever, what we do. I was just like, all right, how do you make that punchy? And look, you've seen the film, and there's, people do get hurt. There's a lot of deaths, a lot of violence, but it's kind of fun to do the fun violence where, yes, it hurts, but you don't want to take a shower afterwards. It's that kind of, and I love the idea that.
I want to take a shower afterwards.
Yeah, there's a great genre where a lot of great movies, action films that are like they just go for the bone and go for the jugular, and I love them. But I'm kind of like, I can't watch that with my wife. And I like to watch movies with my wife. This is my happy place with her. We just kind of like, this is where we're like, let's go. So I was like, this one will be more, if nobody was more for me and my dad, this one is for me and my wife. And I've loved hearing that people watch it with their dads and with their mothers. And an older woman is not supposed to be enjoying an action film. And I say bullshit, because girls love violence no less than guys. They just hide it a little bit better, I think. So, there's too many great movies out there to name, action-wise. Too many. And you know all the best ones. I'm not going to come up with something obscure that's going to shock you with like, Although, the last thing I watched that really, really impressed me, and I should have seen it earlier, was Ninja Scroll, the anime, the 93. And I was like, and I was like, you know what? I've seen all the biggest ones. I want to go deeper and dive into that world now.
I think that the kinds of things you'll pull out, though, might give people reasons to look at something differently or have a slightly different perspective. And that's what's fun about talking to somebody like you about a genre that you love and work in. You mentioned Die Hard is kind of a classically character-driven version, and you highlight it as such. Can you talk a little bit about Nobody, which is another one that's kind of like that? That feels like a character-driven one, and how you approached that differently, and it just popped. People loved it, obviously.
Thank you.
And like if where you're approaching that versus maybe an ensemble, you've got so many big stars. Like we'll talk about them all later, but just this one, and that one's more of a singular character arc.
With Nobody, the reason I think I got the job, and I never checked in with Bob, I should have, but the reason I think I got the job is when I read the script, my first phone call with him, which was a horrible connection. It was just absolutely horrendous. I hope he heard like every second word at best. But I said, I don't know if you guys are aware, but I think you just made an addiction drama that is masquerading as an action film. And he's like, how so? And I was like, well, because unlike the obvious example of John Wick, where he's done with this shit, but they kill his dog and I gotta go back. Or you look at Commando, I'm done with this shit. They steal my daughter, I gotta go back. Bob, they stole a kitty cat bracelet. It's absolutely useless. It doesn't matter. Who gives a crap? He wants to go back. And that's the big difference. He doesn't have to, but he wants to because he's unhappy. So it's a little bit about accepting yourself, about accepting that you're a fucking psycho mass murderer, which is unfortunately not a great thing to be like, yeah, this is good. But it was kind of, once I understood that, and once Bob, I was like, it's a very good point. And him and Derek did not see it that way until I suggested, and then it just clicked. Like, it's all about him, scratching that horrendous itch that is not usually scratched by men with a family and in a nice suburban life. So there was a really easy North Star there. The addiction angle that, again, I think you can watch the movie and not even think about it, and that's okay, because I always like the sub-themes to be sub-themes versus right in your face. But that was a lot of fun, just taking Bob on that journey, and also it's Bob.
Yeah,
so
he's fun. He's funny. He's great.
Yeah.
I think you created a filter through which they saw the story for the first time.
Yes.
And that was probably the reason they were like, this guy.
No, because I think when they got in the call with me, they were like, all right, he's going to explain how he's going to shoot the action. And I didn't talk about the action because I know how to do action. They've seen hardcore, like STX, who was at that point before Universal bought it. They've worked with me on hardcore, so they knew what I was able to do. And I just talked about story. I was like, story, character. We'll figure out all the other fun stuff because action is easy. With the right team, with a bit of time and a budget, we can kick ass. Let's talk about what's going to be special. It's not going to be the action. The action is the dessert. Let's talk about the character. We get that. We nail that, and then we're off to the races.
100%. And again, Die Hard, like nobody really thinks about the character arc. They're enjoying the movie. But if that wasn't there, right? Mm-hmm. Then they couldn't. If the cake isn't there, you can't eat the icing. I mean, you guess you can, but you get sick.
Give them the meat and potatoes, and then the cake. Absolutely. I mean, Die Hard in terms of its characterization and so many details, and with Alan Rickman, with John McClane, with his wife, it's just a great script that McTiernan is a phenomenal director. I didn't mess it up. It is McTiernan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. For a second, I was like, wait, did I just go? Yeah. No, great. But it's really strong storytelling that it is a pop film, but it's much more than that. And I think that's the things that I strive to do. It's yes, you can look at it on the surface level. It's about a guy who's doing this, but really it's about something else. And that is, I think, all the best movies in the world tend to do that.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Whatever the genre. So when you're talking, with Heads of State, what were some of those things? What was the version of the addiction drama? What was the nugget kernel that you were kind of like, that's it? That's where I'm hanging my hat before I get into the fun.
It was the vibe, because when they came to me, when Peter Safran and John McCarr, producers, they pitched the movie. There was no script, and the pitch was John Cena, ex-military, U.S. president. Idris Elba, ex-military, British Prime Minister. And here's the sort of the general lay of what they're going to be doing. And I thought about it. I said, can I come back to you? I gave myself 24 hours, or they gave me 24 hours. And I remember thinking, like, okay, that doesn't work for me, but I do like John Cena. I really like it. How would I make this work?
Right.
And I was like, I came back and said, guys, it's Midnight Run. It's planes, trains, and automobiles via contemporary action lens. Globetrotting, practical, but that's the vibe. It's not, and I kept saying the term, it's non-synthetic warmth. And the key was, you make him an ex-movie star. That wasn't part of the pitch. It was an ex-movie star who becomes a president, who thinks he understands action, who's got an amazing comic perspective. You have Idris, whose curmudgeonly, slightly cold ways all make sense within that world, and he's got to put up with that guy, but he really has to. And that's, every buddy cop buddy movie is about, like, oh, we don't like each other, but we got to work together. So, we're not breaking new formula there, but I love it was always about the vibe first. And once I got that North Star of that feeling of what we're going for, I was able to work with the writers, and we just that was the movie. And it became, in a beautiful way, it became lighter, it became funny, and kept the action. So I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do a straight up action movie. I've done that, enough. I want to try, I love comedy films. I think I can pull this off. And it's also, I got John Cena, and Idris, when the fact you have like a very classic actor versus someone who's been, I consider Cena a stage actor, because to me wrestling is theater, physical theater, but it is theater.
Yeah.
Their ability to improvise, and Idris kind of says like, I'm not very good at improvisation. No, they're both very good. It's just Cena can just be a machine where you just say, he told me early on, he said, look, on the set of the Suicide Squad, James Gunn would just allow me just to go. If he didn't say stop or cut, I would just keep going. So it was kind of a sort of a dessert for the crew and for myself. as we get through the day and near the end, as we got it, we're ahead of our time. Let's. I just wouldn't say cut, and he would just stay and just blast. And you can have 5-7 minutes of. It's super improper. You cannot put in the movie the President of the United States in this film should not be talking like this. But boy, are we all sitting there just like, oh, geez, whoo. So it was a lot of fun to lose the crutches of the violence of the R rating, to be able to dive into the comedy with the support of these, incredible actors. Great charisma. Camera loves them. They know everything, and they're incredibly generous with if Ilya wants another take, Ilya will get another take, not just because they have to, because that's how as a director. No, it's because we're all striving to make it like as perfect as we can with the time that we have. So they're incredible partners, and I've been, I do not say it lightly. You're not supposed to have a good time making an expensive movie. I almost said the number. An expensive movie, and I had a great time. I don't know if we're allowed. I don't think we're allowed to, right? We're hiding the budget, right? Yeah, it's $50. $50 or $350. But anyway.
It was super cheap. It was down and dirty.
It was, we did is like the backgrounds are cardboards that we kind of filled in with markers. No, but you're supposed to have a director. Usually you hear stories, and it doesn't go easy. I had a fantastic time. The cast was super supportive of the vision. Producer was super supportive. The studio was super supportive. It's like, it's very easy to talk about something that was a labor of love. And I don't have to really sell the film. I just say, it's great. I love it. We love it. And I'm my biggest critic, so.
It seemed that you can kind of feel that coming through. They are, the Midnight Run call is excellent. They really capture those guys in a way, the vibe of those two guys. They're a perfect modern action incarnation of it. They're a great odd couple. I mean, you saw that and grabbed it, and it's awesome. A couple quick questions before we wrap, because I mean we could go on, but
I know we could. This is fun.
Do you want to do more? Would you do more Heads of State? Is there Heads of State 2 or whatever?
Look, the way I see it is this: my goal is to make a great film, and hopefully the audience will love it. And if they love it enough, and there is a want and a need, it's something to talk about once we're done with the main one, with the first one, because I don't want to try and figure out a trilogy or any of that. There's other franchises that I don't think of it as a franchise starter. I just think of it as a great film. And if the same with Nobody, as there was no we weren't like, let's make sure it works for part 2. It's like, no, let's make a great Nobody 1. And by the way, this was Universal. They were saying we don't want sequelitis here. We want it to be a good movie. So there is a little bit in the post credits in Nobody 1, but it was there just to leave. I wanted like the Christopher Lloyd feeling at the very end. That was genuinely what we were going for, versus like, let's set it up.
So and Nobody is now a franchise. What are your thoughts on the Nobody 2? I mean, you're not involved, but or maybe I don't know if some way you are. But what are your thoughts about that?
I'm not involved. I'm very excited for the guys. August 16th, I'm there. I've been talking to Timo. He's a great filmmaker, and he's a lovely human being. Obviously, I want the best for Bob, and the entire producer team of Braden, Mark, Kelly, David, all these guys who were they were very kind to me to let me make the movie I wanted to make. They supported me. And, schedules didn't work out in this one. Of course, I'm a little bit like, I built this, but I can't because I started this. But at the same time, life is fantastic. Can't complain about anything. And I love the concept that Nobody was my first American studio film. It's going to be Timo's. Nobody 2 is Timo's first American film. And then Nobody 3 will hopefully happen, and they'll get another guy who's, come in and do his thing. So I
keep bringing new voices over.
I think that's a wonderful tactic. If that works, fingers crossed. Like, I want them all the best, and a huge box office and critical and audience acclaim.
One last question then.
Please.
What aside from Nobody 2 and Heads of State, is there an action movie or franchise you really want to see or are looking forward to rest of this year or in the future?
What I'm looking for? Oh, that's a tough question. I make a point to not look forward to anything. I know what I'll watch, but I will make an exception. Because when I heard that there is a new Naked Gun with that particular team and Liam Neeson, I'm like, I've seen the trailer a couple of times in theaters when I've been watching the last couple of weeks. I close my eye, turn away. I don't want to know nothing. Because that's the one thing I'm like, I'm sure these guys are going to knock it out of the park.
I sure hope so. Yeah, I'm with you, man.
I believe.
I'm glad someone's doing it.
They know what they're doing. Come on, it's going to be great. Yeah. It's going to be great.
Maybe you can do Naked Gun again and a half and a third or whatever.
You know what? I don't think I'm funny enough to do that. That's a very specific that comedy styles of like having 5 gags a minute.
Yeah,
like, I'm not sure I have enough ideas for 5 gags a minute. Maybe 1 gag every. No, I'm kidding. But like 5. It's a very specific thing. But
Never
Interesting.
know.
Interesting. Exactly. You never know until you do. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time, Ilya.
Thank you.
It was great talking to you. Good luck with
Likewise.